Thank you very much. This whole exercise that's happened, that the nurses have been let go by the institution and given termination letters, has not been a very joyous or it's very sad, to be honest, for the country and for the organization. The whole reason is when you've had a relationship with somebody and have worked with them and they love their institution, you really don't want to sever that relationship with a termination. But really the matter was getting to a point where management could not accept labor practices that were totally and absolutely putting patients and the other staff that were in the hospital under duress. The whole reason was nurses went on strike. They picketed on the 1st of February, and the reasons they gave to management, first of all, they went out and never said a word to management. They were seen in the morning having gone out and sat on the stairs. Management called their representatives and asked them why they were not at work. And only then did they tell management that we are there because we are unhappy about our salaries. So there were negotiations going on between staff and management that whole week that did not get to any solution whatsoever. The reason we're saying any solution is because management's stance has always been, since 2012, when this whole matter started, was that we cannot give salaries any more than we are. The employees went on strike in 2013, and the whole reason was the discrepancy that was there in their salaries that was deemed to have occurred when Ministry of Health restructured its salaries for Ministry of Health employees as well as child employees. But for Queen Mamohato Memorial and its clinics, that didn't happen. And government always gave the same reason that our whole budget is given, a whole big chunk of our budget is given to you. So you should pay your employees from the same. But that's not neither here or there, because in the agreement, the salaries have to be at a certain percentage. But when they restructured, they were supposed to have had these discussions with this management of this organization, but that didn't happen. And since then, there's been change of government over and over and over. So explaining it to a minister who is there for a very short time has been quite a feat. I'll just give an example with my office. I've been in this office since 2017, and since then I've worked with 4 ministers. And so from 2017, I've worked with 4 ministers already. So it hasn't been easy to sit with anybody in Ministry of Health and explain this whole endeavor. So now, this year, no, in fact last year, when we had COVID-19 in the country decided that they will now have patients for COVID-19 treated in the facility. And indeed, this is their facility after all. So what they ask of this facility, we have to oblige. So we opened up wards for that purpose. And they met us halfway by giving us staff that go into those wards. So this perturbed our staff in the biggest manner. The reason being that the thought was, these people are going to be paid salaries, or their contracts say they will be paid salaries that are actually higher than those of this facility's nurses. And indeed it is so, like I've said, restructuring didn't happen. But these are very new nurses. Like new nurses, we mean people who are fresh from school. These people have worked since 2010, 2011 in this facility, and there are no raises to them. And this is supposed to be an institution that deals with complicated cases that come from other districts. So they felt it is quite unfair. So they resorted to this picketing, and the Nurses Association came later on, and in fact they wrote to management to say we'd like to investigate and assist in this misunderstanding between the staff and yourselves on the salary issue. So management wrote to them. You should remember we're in arbitration. So when you've tabled your case before the courts of the law, you cannot then discuss it with someone else in those terms. So management wrote back to them and said, I cannot discuss this matter, it's an arbitration, and I cannot discuss the matter with a third party. So that word, third party,
has there ever been any meetings of this arbitration?
No, I said they haven't been since. Yes, since it hasn't happened, and the lawyers who are supposed to sit on it are not from this country. They're South African, so it's been impossible almost for them to sit. So management then answered the Lesotho Nurses Association and said, I can't discuss the matter with a third person. And this perturbed Nurses Association in the biggest way. They are very upset. But my office, through my office, I tried to reach out to them. We worked with them, actually, during the time of the employees' COVID-19 allowances. This institution, again, was left out. And the coalition came with Nursing Association and their Secretary General, Mamohato. And we worked really well. And management felt Ministry of Health will guide us. Coalition said we will guide you. I was the man between, and I worked with them to get management to understand what they are asking for. Management says we negotiate only with Ministry of Health, but we worked wonderfully with them until the employees got their COVID-19 allowances. So she knows how my management works, and that the only way we can get to work together is when there's somebody from this institution assisting them. But this time it wasn't like that, totally and absolutely not like that. I tried to reach out and they really didn't come to the party. So with that whole premise that we are a third party, they tried to come and address their members, and they were not granted access because this perpetuated the whole picketing. So they were not granted access at the gate, and that brought absolute anger in them, that they're not giving access to their members. And we said, but they are not supposed to be sitting on the stairs. This is this is an illegal gathering, it's not allowed. The nation is deemed not to have these sorts of meetings. So the relationship was severed further. I still reached out to them though and called the coalition. The purpose of calling the coalition is the Lesotho Nurses Association is a member of the coalition. And if we worked with the coalition at the time and I got to know Mema Monica in the same manner, it would only make sense that I invite people that I got to know her through. So they came and they investigated as to what has happened to our relationship with the Lesotho Nurses Association. And at the time, I also called LEWA. LEWA is a union that this organization bargains with. And there's an agreement that's signed between this union and this organization. So if this institution bargains with LEWA, it made sense to call LEWA, to call coalition, to find how we can fast track this arbitration. Because if arbitration doesn't happen, no matter how long the nurses strike, no matter who else strikes, because other employees tried to join in, support staff tried to join in. When they were given letters that the nurses had already been given, they realized that this puts our jobs in jeopardy. And they came back. pharmacy did a secondary strike too. They went, and management treated them the same way. They went the same route as management did with nurses, and they came back, but nurses didn't, it led to management on the 14th day realizing that they really are not coming back, and bargaining with them in terms of calling them, talking to them, the reps, and then they'd go back to the employees and back and forth like that for 2 weeks. On the 15th day, management issued a letter that said, from today, I enact no work, no pay. And if you still don't come into the facility with no breaks in your work and you being at your workstation, if you choose not to come back, then it had better not be in the facility. So please leave the premises because we are violating the COVID-19 regulations. So they were given that letter and they left. And I guess you've seen on social media and all of that, it was quite jubilous on that part. There was no fight. They were singing, they were hootering and all of that, meaning there was no strife. This was negotiated, they understood, they read what the employer is saying, and they left. And from the 15th, on the 15th it was on a Monday, and the 16th they came back and sat outside the facility. They brought their camp chairs, they were all sitting there every single day. We tried to get them not to be congregating still, but this time outside the premise, until it was decided by our law enforcement, because when they're outside there, now it is the Tamai police station responsibility. And they decided that from Monday, which was the following Monday on the 22nd, they decided to put cones and regulate movement around the facility and to usher them back into their workplace. This brought the biggest uproar ever, that nurses are being threatened, that this causes fear in them. But the whole purpose of the law enforcement was that they shouldn't camp outside like they did from the 16th, and that they should come into the facility. They didn't. And it should be reminded that employees are the same. There was no sign or a different mask for those that are on strike from those that are not on strike. They are the same. So law enforcement officers couldn't tell who is on strike and who's not. So if they came into the facility and clocked like everybody else who was not on strike, it would have just ended there. They wouldn't. So they then gave that as a reason for them to not come into the facility, that we saw police there, so we were scared. But I really want to take that with a grain of salt, because other people passed, no one stopped them, no one was questioned. So they then camped at Lesotho Nurses Association. And in seeing that this is still perpetuating, the employer decided to take a different stance. And in all of this, as this was happening, the employer also issued, served them with a disciplinary charges, that they should come for their disciplinary hearing, and then they were subsequently stopped because now they were out of the facility. And then the employer, when realizing that they're not coming back into the facility, decided there's another way probably to get them to understand that they are still needed and wanted in the facility. So the route with an employee and employer is to go to the labor court, which is DDPR. And that's what they did. They went to DDPR and sued the employees to come back. That motion was to get the employees to come back into the facility. And so the courts deemed that they should come back. They interdicted the strike, but the employees didn't come back still. This was on the 24th. On the 25th, after the judgment, they didn't come back. And management wrote to them then and said, this is the final ultimatum. It's a final ultimatum for you to come back to work. If you don't, you're really forcing me to go according to the labor code and to dismiss you. This was also another way, I believe, to get the employees to come back and to get to see that this is now going where they wouldn't want it to go. Everybody needs a job and people don't want to lose their jobs. So the employees then didn't come back, and so management from the 12th, and then from the 12th, no, in fact, let's rewind to the 10th. On the 10th was when they were to go back to court and tell the courts how they have worked out. Between then, they have wanted to sit on the 1st of March. They've wanted to sit with management and discuss. Management then answered them and said, I don't understand. In fact, on the 1st, management said, no, I think it's better on the 2nd because there were things going on. On the 2nd, the rep said, she's in Clocoland and can't come. Then another date was placed, which was on the 4th. And so they were supposed to sit on Friday the 4th, on Thursday the 4th, but then it didn't happen. And the whole reason was management was still like waiting for them to come back into the facility, but they didn't. So management is like, I don't understand what we're negotiating if you really are not coming back into the facility. So on Friday, they met with management, and the meeting took very short indeed. And their question was, is the money here yet? Management said, no, the money is not here. And then they said, oh, okay. Management said, are you coming into the facility? They said, no, we're not. And then the meeting ended. So then after that meeting, the management realized that actually it's almost pointless then to go back on the 17th because their stance is very clear. If there's no money, they're not coming back into the facility. So then that's when that issuing of dismissal letters happened. It was on the 40th day. Patients have been abandoned from the 1st of February, and so management has an obligation to the Basotho Nation and to these patients that are in the facility. So that's what happened. As to the coalition, like I mentioned, and that Odimo Lewa, they decided to go the route that I believe we should probably all steer towards, that the labor code says when essential services are threatened, because they're threatened. When they're threatened, this should be enacted. And within 10 days, a report should be given, and if the report is not amicable to both parties, then arbitration has to happen. But it has to happen here in Lesotho, which would be very fast, so that between Ministry of Health and this and the Tsepong organization, we can know who has to pay this, and they have plans as to what is going to happen, because there's we've had a year that nurses and pharmacists were negotiating with management the same thing, and their salaries were increased to the capacity, I believe, that this organization could at the time, so in order to curb their leaving the organization. There was this grand brain drain, so they gave them quite a bit, and they didn't leave. So this organization has tried to meet them halfway, but it can't take over what government has to assist us with, which is the restructuring of the salaries.
So tell me, on this restructuring, is Tsepong expecting government to pay more or to pay for the salary restructuring process?
Like it did for child. That's what happened for Chow. That's what should happen for this facility. When they change the salary, we should remember we are given all of our money to function, to give salaries for maintenance, all of this by Ministry of Health. We should remember the drugs that are used here, patients sent to Bloemfontein, that bill there is paid with this money that we're given. Oxygen, that every Mosotho knows, oxygen never runs out at this facility and its clinics. That's what that money is used for, functioning. So there's a discrepancy when it came to salaries, that it was not restructured when it gave Child and Ministry of Health workers. So that's where the discrepancy fell.
Why is Tsepong failing to put within the bill it gives the Lesotho government the increase in salaries?
It has. That's why we're going to arbitration to say, but we did. And we asked you, we said, why did you do this without having warned me? We're supposed to have a discussion, and then the ministers changed over and over, like I was saying. The interest of this organization has been to fix that, because when looking at it, it looks like exploitation, that they work the most, the longest hours, complicated cases, but they're actually paid less than the other employees in government who refer to this facility. So it really isn't what should have happened, because that's not how this this institution was designed to function.
Yeah, but you see, the biggest problem is we have a pending arbitration process that has been pending for so many years. And on the other hand, you are talking about human beings also. They have rights.
Yes.
But they may not have the best of negotiating platforms, as now they find themselves in a fix where they are fired, they don't know where to go. So what is the way forward for the hospital?
Well, I would want to say they do have a voice. The Lesotho Nurses Association was supposed to have taken the bigger role of assisting and what can I say, guiding nurses as to what their profession allows them to do and what not to do. In all of this, we've seen everything that's gone on. And I would have understood the association to be in like what they say in our language, Sesotho. They call themselves Rakhad. Rakhad is somebody who sits you down and tells you and mandates you when you want to get out of line, what you can and cannot do. The association was supposed to guide, mentor, and really take it upon their shoulders, not go the same route that a union went and take nurses or allow them, like they say, the nurses are the ones who wanted to do this, but I want to know, couldn't they have deemed them or guided them as to how, and then they take it up in this labor code I'm talking about, in knocking at the minister's doors like they're doing, but with nurses still doing that job. I haven't seen anybody take that route except the coalition now, together with Lewa. They every single time somebody has wanted to step in, is that nurses should go against their mandate to assist patients, save life, by not being at work and hitting the streets and picketing and being on strike. That's not the way. I've always felt, even Lewa, nurses, most of them left Lewa and joined the association. And I understood why they do that, because Lewa was taking a route that nurses probably shouldn't. But now I see the association taking the same route, which is quite sad, really.
Okay, so is it safe for Mosotho to still want to come here during this time?
It's been 40 days, more than 40 days, and Mosotho has been assisted. And we shouldn't forget the doctors. We really, really shouldn't forget the doctors. There's our doctor who works for the Gateway Clinic, just out of them all. They're all working very hard because they are doing a nurse's role and then doing their own role. And then the clerks as well. Everybody who's not on strike, who would really want to be on the same page with the nurses.
There are claims that there's been a child who lost a life.
That would be investigated. The reason I say this is because the association is saying a whole lot of things, even on radio, and people giving testimonies as to what. This was a gentleman that was on one of the radio stations who said he worked in our COVID ward, having been donated by government to assist us. And he was telling the nation how he's been transporting bodies to the morgue. So those kind of allegations have to be investigated, like for real, because were they at their workstations, would people have lost their lives like they are saying? I don't know this attestation they're saying. I really don't, because people are working really hard. The unit managers, the people who are not on strike, the very same nurses that were donated by the Ministry of Health for the COVID-19 wards, people who came for locums, all of those people have been working tirelessly to pick up the pieces where these nurses left the facility for 40 days. We're going to the 43rd day, I believe, by now. But these people have been working, people have had the appointments. And then I should say, we have an international monitor, IM, that comes here and is sent by Ministry of Health to audit us. They came, even during this time of strike, they came. Ministry of Health has sent a delegation that was led by Dr. Petlan. They came to the facility and took around and looked around. The Lesotho Nursing Council came. So all those people, I believe, are pertinent people to go to and ask whether these allegations that the association is saying are really true. Life gets lost in facilities, all health facilities around the world. But it is not because nurses are on strike. If it is, then that should be really taken to task, and the council should really take its role, because they are the body that monitors malpractice.
So, your last message to the nurses on behalf of the hospital, what is it?
It's really sad, very sad, that this has come to where it is. Their plea is very, very pertinent. It's astronomical. It is, I don't know how to put it in a way that they should understand, but they were tired.